I love Aberdeen, South Dakota. Huh? This is an honor. I've been to Aberdeen probably 15 times in the last year, and each time I kind of fall in love with it just a little bit more than the last time, because what's happening in Aberdeen is really what's happening across the country. Is people are starting to get involved in politics. People that have never been involved before are getting involved now. I just spoke with a gal from Minnesota, from Faribault, Minnesota. She has never been involved in politics. She's actually a registered Democrat. And she called me and talked to me really for an hour or two about what's going on in Faribault, Minnesota. And it's very similar to what's going on in Aberdeen. She'd never been involved in politics until 2 years ago. So, as I get to come up to Aberdeen and I get to meet just incredibly hardworking, patriotic Americans who are called extremists or deplorables, right? I'm thinking, I recognize these people. These are my family. These are my friends. These aren't deplorables. These are the people that I want to defend. And I will defend you. Everywhere I go, I want to tell the story of what's going on. And I've been thinking about this for a long time. There's a general malaise that has happened in the country over the last 10 years. And before I ran to become a state senator for Watertown, I had actually kind of given up on politics. I saw this massive amount of looming debt, and I saw an endless war on terror, and I saw a political system that was so broken that there was no way to fix that political system. The system is designed for you to go to Washington, D.C. with your hand out and bring back more money and put it in the pockets. But when complex and difficult problems come up, the system isn't designed to fix those problems. And that's why you just see kicking the can down the road just a little bit longer and a little bit longer, and things are getting worse. That's how you end up with $700 billion worth of deficit every year. Does anybody know what our annual budget is for the country is? $4 trillion. It's predicted that in 5 years, our annual deficit is going to be $1.5 billion. That's $1 out of $4 that is coming up. It's being made out of nothing. We're creating money out of thin air. So I was going up to North Dakota for the last 5 years. I've been working 80 hours a week, and I've been living in Watertown. My father had the early stages of dementia. And before my mom passed away, I was living in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And so I moved back to Watertown in order to help my father kind of wrestle with this part of life, this stage of going from this world to the next. And I went up to Williston, North Dakota, and I would work, my assistant is in the audience here, and I hired her. I didn't have a penny to my name. And I said, everything's going to work out, I think. And I told her that we're going to make a lot of money. And so then what I did was I just worked so hard that I couldn't fail. It's kind of what everybody here in South Dakota, that's what our heritage is just this idea that you work hard and you sacrifice and you live with thrift. And so I started going up to North Dakota, and this oil boom hit. And I was perfectly positioned to be able to start leasing all this equipment. People on the blogosphere say, oh, he's just a little parts washer salesman. Unbelievable. In order to sell parts washers, I had to create a lease company because there was, after the 2008 hit, they shut down all leasing companies. I had to start a leasing company on credit cards where I would borrow money at 19% and I would lend it out at 12%. That's not very good money, but you do what it takes, right? That's what the ingenuity of the American experience is all about. Is this hard work and this effort that you go about making things better. So I went up there for 5 years, and I was very fortunate. I became not just the best salesman in the country, not just the best salesman in the industry, but became an internationally, globally recognized person in what I do for a living. Okay? So after 5 years, I was able to turn my financial fortunes around, but I was very concerned about what was going on in the country. So I decided that I was going to run for the state senate. The price of oil had gone from $140 down to $25 a barrel. And I had some extra free time. And I also cared. I cared about the direction of our country because it didn't make sense. And so I showed up. Not a lot of people knew me in Watertown. I worked all the time. I didn't have kids going to high school, so I didn't get involved in the high school activities. But I decided that I was going to do something different. And I went door to door. And I knocked on 1,400 doors. And I talked to about 700 to 800 people. And I didn't just knock on their door and say, "Hi, my name is Neal Tapio, I'd like your vote." I'd say, "Could I come in and talk to you for a little while?" Because there's something going on in our country that scares me, and I wanted to see if it scares you. And what I determined was that people, grandparents, were scared. They weren't scared for their lives, but they were scared for their kids' lives and their grandkids' lives. They didn't know how this thing made sense anymore. How can a government run this large of deficits and still be functional? How do you have an endless war on terror where you spend $6.5 trillion on an endless war on terror since 2001, and you're no further than the day we started that terror and solving the problem? One of my best friends in the world, he's on his 19th year in the Army. He's been on 5 tours. He just got his notice that he's going on his 6th tour. Okay? The first time he went over to Iraq, he was extraordinarily positive. He thought that we were going to be serving a noble purpose, that we were going to bring freedom to the world, that somehow that we could shed our blood to bring freedom to those people living in the Middle East. And he got to know an incredibly large number of people that he worked with, these translators, and just had amazing experiences. And then nothing happened. The second time he went over, his mood got a little bit worse. He started wondering, I wonder if we're doing the right thing. Can we actually impose freedom on other people? Or do they have to fight for freedom themselves? See, our country, our people, have fought for freedom, and we bled. Honorable people in our armed forces have sacrificed their lives and their limbs and their treasure for freedom. But can we provide freedom for somebody else if they don't fight for it themselves? Can we impose it on others? So the third time he goes over, and he's wondering, what's the purpose? And the fourth time, I've noticed that his mood got so incredibly low, and he started questioning whether or not he should have his children. He's 3rd generation military. He's wondering if he should have his children serve in the military. Think of that. Patriotic Americans. South Dakota has the highest level of membership in the armed forces in the country, between the National Guard and the military. And people that we're sending over to fight and die need to have a mission. They need to understand exactly what we're fighting for. I want to tell you a little story. If ever you guys want to learn about the political system, you should go to the state of Iowa during a presidential campaign. Because an incredibly large number of people, of candidates, come and they work crowds just this size, and that you have an amazing interaction with them. So last year, before the Iowa caucus, I went to every presidential candidate. Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, Ben Carson, Donald Trump, all of them. Well, Jeb Bush, he never showed up in Iowa. Exclamation point. Okay. So I was at a Ted Cruz rally, and I was sitting beside just a table by myself, and to my left is this couple, young couple, probably 65 or 70 years old, and another couple. And the one couple says, "Did you know that these folks are the parents of a Purple Heart recipient?" I said, "Oh, okay, interesting. I'm a sales guy. I'm not comfortable. I didn't know exactly what even a Purple Heart meant." So we got to talking, and they said, "Well, what do you?" I said, "I'm interested in running for the U.S. House. I think our politics have gone all haywire, and I think that we need to have good people get involved." And so we got to talking, and they invited me to their house. And so I went into their home in the middle of a farmyard at 7 o'clock at night. It's pitch black. Into a total stranger's house. That's how friendly people are, and that's how the deplorables are in Iowa. They're nice people too. And I went there and I sat down, and I met this 18-year-old young American patriot. No arms, no legs, prosthetics. No legs above his knee, no arms above his elbow. And I sat there and I talked to him. A little bit uncomfortable at first, but as we made small talk, I asked him, "What are we fighting for? What is it that you're fighting for?" And he said, "I'm fighting for my buddy. I want to keep him alive." And we went around the table, his beautiful 18-year-old blonde-haired wife. They're going to live with the scar of war for the rest of their lives. And I said, "What do you think your husband was fighting for?" She didn't know how to answer that. She's never been asked that question before. It was their patriotic duty. He signed up because he was a patriot. He believed in something. I said, "But what's the purpose?" In World War II, we had Imperial Japan, we had Nazi Germany, slaughter of Jews. In Vietnam, we had people that we were trying to stop the advance of communism. And if we only have just unleashed our abilities, we would have been able to have a much better outcome on that. But we told our servicemen and women to just fight with one hand tied behind your back. Well, right now, he couldn't answer that. And I said, "There's got to be something more." So I started thinking, what is the purpose? Why are we sending 18-year-old kids to die? Donald Trump. I became state director for Donald Trump's campaign. I pursued it. I went to their rallies. I went to 6 rallies in just a few amount of months. I went and talked to the highest level of their campaign. And I said, "I believe in what you're doing." And when he came out and he said that we need to stop Muslim immigration, and some people will say, "Who?" He said, all Muslims. He said, "Until we figure out what's going on," he said, "until we figure out what the hell is going on." He had me. He brought me back into the political fold and saying, okay, finally somebody is willing to talk about the real issues. Last year I brought a resolution in front of the Senate. All it said is that we thank Donald Trump, President Trump, for his fight against radical Islamic terrorism. It was defeated in a state Senate that has 69% Republican majority. We can't even say that the fight is against radical Islamic terrorism in this state, in Aberdeen? Does that even make sense? All right, so then I started to talk to people in depth about exactly what we're fighting. Because we don't even agree on what we're fighting. How can you ask an 18-year-old kid to go serve his country and die when you don't even admit who the terrorists are? You hear these arguments, well, there's all kinds of domestic terrorists. There's somebody that blew something up here or shot some people there. We've spent $6.5 trillion fighting an endless war on terror. And that terror is brought to us by groups called ISIS, the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, by Al-Qaeda, by Boko Haram, by Al-Shabaab, by Hamas, by Hezbollah. The list goes on and on. In every Muslim country, there's an Islamic group that believes in the full implementation of Islamic law. You guys know this. Okay. There's 14 Islamic countries that kill you for leaving Islam. I'm not making it up. You're not a radical for just saying that. It's the truth. Pew Research puts out a poll. They have graphs. And it says these are the number of people that believe in the full implementation of Islamic law in each country. And then these are the people that believe that you should be killed for leaving Islam. I did calculations and it comes out to about 350 million people. 350 million people believe that you should be killed for leaving Islam in this world. That seems to be a pretty important figure in my mind. For me to ask questions about that, I get labeled racist and extremist, a xenophobe and Islamophobe. That's ridiculous. We're all patriotic Americans. We believe in the values that we were brought up with. Hard work, thrift, sacrifice, freedom, faith, family, free enterprise. We believe in patriotic service to our country. Probably many of your children serve in the armed forces. Many of you have lost family members or have been affected. The war on terror, 10,000 people have died, Americans have died in the war on terror. But the Department of Veterans Affairs says that up to 1.5 million people have been affected, that are hurt because of this war. I'm trying to start a conversation in South Dakota about the most delicate issue that's facing the entire world. When you see what's going on in Western Europe, when you see what's going on around the country, around the world, you guys are mainstream. That's what the Trump election was all about, is that the people of this country are taking this country back. You guys are a part of that. When I come to Aberdeen and I see 400 Patriots showing up for a rally that's trying to save your community, to try to protect your community, it's amazing. You're a part of that movement. And that movement is not a small minority. You have to believe that you're a part of the majority. My job is to make sure you know that, and to make sure that you get up every morning believing that you can make a difference. For me to do what I'm doing in Pierre, I am challenging the conventional wisdom of almost every elected representative, including our governor, lieutenant governor, Senator Thune, Kristi Noem, Marty Jackley. I've had conversations with every one of them. They are so sick of me having this conversation with them, but I'm not going to let them go. They have to take it notice. South Dakota is an important state in the country. It's a small enough state that I can actually have a conversation with every one of you. And I can go and have these conversations every day for the next 6 months or 9 months about very difficult issues. And when you tell your neighbors, when you tell your friends, I believe that we can have a movement in South Dakota. I don't want to put myself, I never volunteered to talk about this issue. I got a call from somebody in Aberdeen one night about 10 o'clock saying, yeah, I know people that have been downtown Aberdeen that have been harassed. And I didn't even know there was a community in Aberdeen. But as I learn more and more, it fits into this pursuit of knowledge or intellectual curiosity that I've had. About 3 or 4 years ago, I read the Quran for the first time. Then I read it again. And then I started going to national symposiums around the country. And I talked to world leaders. I've talked to almost every speaker that's come to Aberdeen. I've had a meeting with them. 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours to try to understand what they're talking about and to be able to tell their story. This is not the only issue that I'm running on. There's many issues that we have to confront. Right now, another issue that I'm very concerned about is this idea that there's a problem with juvenile justice. As I get to know more about juvenile justice, you just shake your head going, what is going on with our culture? I had an intern last year, and he graduated from Rapid City Central, and I asked him, what is the percentage of people that have used marijuana one time before graduating? And he said probably 80 to 90%. And I said, well, how many are habitual users, meaning they use marijuana maybe once or twice a month? And he said probably 40 to 50%. And so I said, wow, that can't be true. So I started asking just a ton of people about it. And you know what? Almost every person I asked says about 40 to 50% of the kids graduating from high school are using marijuana. We have a meth problem, right? Everybody's heard of the meth problem, right?
Oh, yeah.
Every DA, every police chief, every state's attorney that I've talked to, you've also heard that marijuana is not a gateway drug. Remember that little lie? Every person that's on meth, the state's attorney will tell you that it started with marijuana. We need to have a zero tolerance policy. What are we doing? You hear the governor talking about having a workforce problem. We don't have a workforce problem. I sat on the board at the Lake Area Vocational School, or technical school, I guess, in Watertown, and the people that were having the workforce study were business owners in town, or members of the manufacturing community. I said, well, how many of the people that you're hiring have to have a drug test? And he said, well, all of them. Well, if we're graduating people that can't pass a drug test, we don't have a workforce problem. We have a bigger problem. We have a problem that people think that you can get high and then there's no ramifications. You can't be self-reliant if you can't have a job. I mean, the pathway to success in this world is to use your hands to make a living. To be able to have a blue-collar job and to work your hind end off, right? And to show up and to work long hours and to sacrifice and to store those pennies and dollars. But we have a workforce that can't show up, that they don't even pass a drug test. We've got to start focusing on our real problems. I was talking to a tribal leader in West River, and I was asking him about, I sit on the Gear Up Commission, and we're trying to understand exactly how this Gear Up and EV5 stuff happened. And when you start digging into it, you're thinking, what is going on? You got former employees that create a slush fund of $65 million that comes from the federal government, and then they go outside of the government, create a consulting company, and they get paid $180,000 for consulting work for 10 hours a week. Who gets kind of work like that? I never got any of that. That's ridiculous, right? But nobody dares raise their hand and say, this is wrong. So I'm talking to this tribal leader, and I'm saying, I'm not understanding this Gear Up. It was a way to help Native children access college. And we have one whistleblower that said, hey, there's a lot of fraud going on, and so she's fired. But what I'm learning is that the Native culture we're accepting things that shouldn't be accepted. The amount of incest and molestation and drug use. Mexican drug cartels are evidently living on the reservations. And so we were talking about this, and just in passing, he said, well, yeah, there were 3 teen suicides last weekend on the reservation, and then he just kept on going. And I said, wait a minute. What? There was 3 suicides of teenagers on a reservation, and your eyes didn't dilate at any? He just went and kept on talking. We can't accept all this. We're losing an entire generation of people. I think it's racist to ignore that. That's the way I look at it. We have to have the courage to stand up and say, you know what, we can't accept this. For too long, government has just allowed this to fester. We've kicked the can down the road for too long. And I'm so happy for Donald Trump. I'm just, every day I wake up thankful because he's slashing regulations. He's unleashing the power of the human spirit to create again. You look at the stock market and it's going up. There's a belief in America again. He's taking on issues head on. He's taken out ISIS. He's showing strength to the world again. And because of that, he's going to unleash an economy that I believe is going to be a revitalization of this country. It should give you hope that the next generation has hope. That's what President Trump's election means to me. I hope it means the same to you. So I appreciate all of you coming tonight. I appreciate just taking time away from your families and show that you care. And I appreciate your support. If you agree with me, I need your help. It's not an easy job taking on issues that nobody else wants to talk about. And if you believe, as I know you do, I need you to sign petitions, and I need you to take a petition, and I need you to get your friends to sign it, and take it to your churches. Organize. I know you guys are working, but we need to be led by people that are bold, that have the courage to fight the system. That's the only way we're going to change and take our country back. So thank you very much for coming, and I appreciate it. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have questions.